Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving deep into a story that's been haunting the darker corners of the internet. It comes from an anonymous confession posted late one night about a seemingly idyllic village with a terrifying secret. Imagine escaping the city for a peaceful retreat, only to find yourself in a place that won't let you go. The poster claimed they rented a cottage for some solitude, but soon realized the quiet was a mask for something much more sinister. The rules were simple, but chilling. Never speak to anyone after dark, and if you hear your own voice calling from the woods, you must not, under any circumstances, answer it. According to the post, this village doesn't just welcome visitors. It consumes them, piece by piece, until nothing is left but an echo. Let's unravel this chilling tale together. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more dives into the unknown.
If you ever find a village where no one looks at the church after sunset, leave. I used to laugh at stories about cursed places. Old villages, haunted wells, ghost trees. I thought they were just folklore, stories told by lonely people with too much imagination. I was a man of reason, an architect from the city, completely burned out by deadlines and noise. When my therapist suggested I take a break somewhere quiet, I found a listing for an old stone cottage in a forgotten countryside village called Marrow's End. It looked peaceful, too peaceful. The ad described it as secluded, untouched by time, perfect for a creative retreat. The picture showed rolling green hills, a crooked little church, and a cluster of cottages that looked like they'd been carved straight out of the 1800s. I booked it for 3 months. The first day I arrived, I noticed something strange. The people didn't make eye contact. They'd nod politely but never looked directly at me. Even the children avoided my eyes. I just told myself it was small-town shyness. But that night, when the church bell rang at exactly 6 p.m., every single curtain in the village closed simultaneously, and not one person was outside. I thought it was a coincidence until I walked toward the church after dark. The air changed. It became heavier, colder, like I was trying to breathe through wet cloth. My phone flashlight dimmed, then died completely. I didn't hear insects or even the wind. There was only a faint hum, deep and steady, like a heartbeat coming from under the ground. That's when I saw someone inside the church, a tall figure, motionless in the candlelight, standing right behind the altar. I called out, but they didn't move. I remember feeling embarrassed for intruding, so I turned to head back down the path, and that's when I saw that every cottage window was now glowing faintly red, as if the curtains were hiding lanterns inside. The next morning, no one mentioned it. When I asked the shopkeeper about the church, he just froze. His hand stopped mid-air, holding a jar of honey. Then, very quietly, he said, "Best not go near it after dusk." "Why?" I asked. He didn't answer. He just crossed himself and said, "You're here to rest." So rest. That night I dreamed of the church. I was inside it, but the walls were made of breathing flesh, pulsing softly. The altar was covered in black moss, and behind it, a small, wet-looking door opened and shut on its own. Something whispered my name through it. When I woke up, my mouth tasted like earth. For the next week, I tried to ignore it. I went on morning walks, sketched the hills, and even had tea with a woman named Mrs. Holly, who owned the cottage next to mine. She was kind but nervous, always twisting her hands together, always glancing toward the church steeple in the distance. One afternoon, as I was leaving, she stopped me at the door. "If you hear your own voice after sunset," she said, "don't answer it." I laughed awkwardly. She didn't. That evening I stayed inside. I wanted to prove to myself that all of this was just superstition. I made dinner, played some music, and poured a glass of wine. At exactly 6, the bell rang again. One slow, dragging toll, then silence. A few minutes later, someone knocked on my door. It was my own voice. "Let me in," it said, muffled through the wood. I forgot my keys. The glass slipped from my hand and shattered. I didn't move. The knocking continued, gentle, almost playful. Then, from the window, I saw a shadow of myself standing outside, same height, same jacket, same everything. But the smile, it was wrong. It stretched too wide. I stayed awake until sunrise, gripping a kitchen knife, staring at the door. When daylight finally came, I ran to Mrs. Hale's house. She looked like she hadn't slept in years. When I told her what happened, she just nodded slowly. "It chooses the outsiders," she said. "It calls them with what they trust most, their own reflection." She told me the story then. Merrow's End was built over a burial ground belonging to an order of monks who believed they could trap sin itself beneath the earth. They performed rituals in the church, sealing what they called the burden of voices inside the soil. But when the order died out, the ground cracked open again and the curse began. Each generation, someone new would come to the village, someone untainted, unaware, and the church would take them. Sometimes slowly, sometimes in a single night. By the second week, I started hearing whispers whenever I looked at my reflection. In the mirror, in the kettle, even in the puddles, after rain. My reflection would move just a fraction of a second slower than me. I stopped sleeping. My sketches turned violent black lines, frantic spirals, faces with hollow mouths. The villagers began to avoid me completely. One morning I found strange symbols carved into my cottage door. I scrubbed them off, but the wood bled underneath like it was alive. On the last night I decided to leave. I packed my car before sunset, but when I turned the key, the engine made a sound like screaming metal and then died. The sky darkened faster than usual. I looked toward the church. Its windows were glowing red and alive. Then I heard it again, my voice. Only this time it came from inside the house. I ran to the door, but it slammed shut. Every window sealed itself from the inside, boards I hadn't nailed clattering across the frames. The air grew heavy, pressing on my chest. And then I saw it, a shadow leaking from the cracks in the floorboards, writhing upward like smoke, shaping itself into me. It smiled that same broken smile. "You shouldn't have stayed past the third bell," it said. The last thing I remember before blacking out was the feeling of cold fingers wrapping around my throating, not choking, but guiding like a puppeteer. When I woke up, it was morning. My car was gone. My clothes were clean. The door was open, and the villagers were standing outside, watching me. None of them spoke. Mrs. Hall stepped forward and placed her hand on my shoulder. "It's done," she said. "You're one of us now. That was 2 years ago. I still live here. The days are quiet, peaceful. I don't remember much of who I was before, only fragments. But every evening, when the bell rings, I close my curtains like everyone else. I don't look at the church. And sometimes when outsiders pass through and ask me for directions, I tell them the same thing Mrs. Holly once told me. If you hear your own voice after sunset, don't answer it. If this story chilled you to the bone, don't forget to subscribe to Dark Thread, where every shadow hides a story too real to forget. Leave a comment if you've ever felt something watching you in a place that shouldn't exist. And remember, some villages are quiet for a reason. Sleep well. If you can,